Welcome to PlanMember. I'm your host, Ash Bennington. Today, I'm joined by Jean Beresin, Executive Director, the Clay Center for Young, Healthy Minds, Senior Educator in Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at MGH, associated with Harvard Medical School, and Professor of Psychiatry, at Harvard Medical School. I'm sure Jean will tell us all about the difference. Jean, welcome to PlanMember. Great to have you with us.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
So let's talk a little bit about what you do first. By the way, we're talking about today a topic near and dear to the hearts of many, the role of grandparents in developing the emotional well-being of children. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about what you do in your day-to-day work.
Well, as director of the Clay Center, we write blogs, do podcasts, videos. It's an online educational resource to support the social, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral well-being of young people and families, and purely educational. But I spent most of my career prior to 2013 teaching residents, medical students, faculty members. I'm a clinician. I have my own private practice. Been practicing for over 40 years. So it's a busy life, and I still do a lot of teaching and educational work at Mass General and around the country.
So tell us about the Clay Center and how and why you spun it up.
Well, the Clay Center came about because, it, it's no surprise. It's been no surprise to anybody that psychiatric disorders are among the most common, if not the most prevalent, of any illnesses we have. I mean, 1 in 4 people at any given point in time will have a psychiatric disorder, and over the course of a lifetime, 1 in 2. And 75% begin before age 26, 50% begin before age 14. So it seemed to me, as a clinician and as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, that if we can get education, which has been sorely neglected in public mental health, has really been vastly underserved, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. And if people know what to look for, when to worry, what to do, the 3 W's, okay? Then we can prevent psychiatric disorders, or we can catch them early and we can treat them early. And far too often, the longer you have them, the longer you maintain them. So the whole point of the Clay Center was really to provide public mental health education in multiple formats, so that people that want to, listen to a podcast while they're driving, picking up their kids, or going to work, they can do that. If they like to read blogs, we've got blogs. If they want to see YouTube, we have videos. So we wanted to make it a multimedia, and we do webinars and we do all kinds of events. So it's meant to kind of cast a big net and really help people understand social, emotional, psychological issues and problems in their lives.
Wonderful work. Jean, today we're here to talk about the role of grandparents in children's lives, the emotional significance of becoming a grandparent. Talk a little bit about that. What does the science tell us?
Well, it tells us that it's super important to grandparents and to grandchildren. So I'm a grandfather of 9, and emotionally, it it the emotional power of being a grandparent is, one, I think, seeing your own legacy, your heritage, moving ahead into the future, taking pride in your own kids, and enjoying the fact that they're now parents, and it's emotionally super rewarding to see your own kids having kids. And your relationship to your grandchildren is very, very special. I mean, it's unique. Um, it's emotionally powerful. It's rewarding. It comes without the strings of parenting, so you can use what you've learned to kind of help guide them, and the connection, the bond. It's like when you have your first child. It's a love affair that didn't exist before. It's immediate love affair. Grandparenting is not all that different. But you also have the interesting and important role of being kind of a guide, both to your parents and to your grandchildren.
Talk a little bit about the difference between parenting and grandparenting in terms of the role itself, the sort of benefits to it, and some of the responsibilities as well.
Well, there are a lot of the benefits are, incredible. I mean, when your grandchildren, when they're very, very young, they give you a name, and that name sticks with you. So I have 3 or 4 different names depending on which family. Yeah, I have 4 kids and 9 grandchildren, and I am called different by different, and for them to make up those names is really endearing. So, that's super special.
It's
But,
it's pr-
it
it's
all
probably the only way you ever get to do that unless you become pope.
right. Yeah, you call it a lot of different things. Um, so, but I think, the role of the grandparent, there are multiple roles that we provide. So for example, one role is, giving parents a break. And it's not babysitting, but parenting, as I'm sure many in who are watching this know, is a very time consuming operation. And you don't have time for a run or to go to the gym or to just kick back and relax or go for a walk. And grandparents can give parents a break, but they also can be involved not in just giving them a break, but in kind of making a special relationship with the grandchildren. It's not just babysitting, but they can help take care of them. They can provide special snacks. They can provide special events. And parents can actually facilitate this, by getting like right around my house, there's the Children's Discovery Museum. And, we have family memberships, and taking the kids to the Discovery Museum is a special event. So, taking care of the kids is super important.
You alluded to earlier this idea of the advice giving role. Talk a little bit about that. And I imagine it flows two ways, first to your own children and then to the grandchildren.
Well, you're right. It's very important, but there's a lot of stuff that we have experienced as grandparents that they don't. So, for example, from the simple things of not so simple, but picky eaters or temper tantrums or sibling rivalry, to more complicated things like separation anxiety or nightmares or, refusal to go to school or problem sleeping, to more significant problems if the grandchildren have any mental health problems such as depression, anxiety, stress, loneliness, we can help out. Now, one thing about giving advice is that I think this is also really important, is that the parents have to set the rules. They have to set, uh, you know, uh, screen time, the kind of food they want their kids to eat, uh, you know, sweets, processed food, you name it. We've got to, as grandparents, we can give advice, but we've got to know what the parents are setting as guidelines, abide by them, and then help implement them. And I think it's also really important for us to talk with our kids, our adult kids, about the development of their kids. What kind of problems they have, what are their strengths, what are their interests, what are their weaknesses, what do they really like to do? How can we enhance their their strengths, and how can we improve their weaknesses? So having discussions about that is really important. And also maybe giving our kids or adult kids some idea of what runs in families. How our families, if there are any illnesses or problems that run in families, it's really important for parents to know that, because heredity is a fact.
So that can be some tricky terrain. How do you navigate that? How do you give the feedback in a way that's seen as maybe being objective, because you do have a little bit more distance, a little bit more objectivity? How do you negotiate those conversations with your own children about their children?
Gently, and with respect. I mean, I think listening is more important than giving the advice and asking for what advice they would want. I mean, and again, every adult is different. Some want to hear it and some don't want to hear it. Some will just say, and I think it's important to say, look, if I'm out of line or if you don't want to hear my advice, just tell me to shut up. Okay. And I'll keep my mouth shut. And then it's very difficult. You've got to sit thinking that you know what the answers are, but you disagree with them. But look, conflict is inherent in all families, right? So we have to be able to live with conflict. We have to be able to live with differences. And at the same time, we have to kind of earn their trust. I mean, I can tell you, if I give advice that they don't want, they'll tell me, I don't need to hear that. On the other hand, I get calls as a doctor. What about this rash? What about this? She's throwing up but she can't sleep at night. Or should I give her another Tylenol? I mean, if they want to, if they trust me enough in certain domains, I'm there. And then in other domains, uh, we have to kind of just live with it. It's a matter of respect, really, of respecting their role as parents and as competent parents. And hopefully they'll learn from my mistakes and do it better.
What are some of the common friction points, some of the common challenges that can arise in the relationship between the grandparent and their child, the parent of the child of the grandchild?
Well, uh, bending their rules. I mean, first of all, they set the rules for bedtime, for the screen time, for the kind of food that they want to eat. And we have to abide by first of all, we have to know what their rules are. And I tend to love TV and watching things. And most of my kids um, really limit screen time, which I think is a good thing to do. I was raised coming home from school and watching television. Okay. Um, and it's very tempting for me to just turn on the TV and watch Bluey or you name it. Actually, I like to show them stuff that they really haven't seen, like Betty Boop or old Mickey Mouse, cartoons, and they're going like, "Whoa, this is strange." So, but on the other hand, I think we can bend the rules within reason. We can spoil them a little bit. We should let the parents know when we are spoiling them a little bit. And so there's that balance of abiding, of one knowing what their lifestyle is, what their rules are, what the kids are growing up expecting is the norm, and then knowing how far we can bend the rules to kind of like be special.
Hmm. And that must be very much a balancing act.
It is a balancing act.
So
Yeah,
sometimes it's a grandparent's prerogative to take a grandchild for ice cream on a Tuesday night.
you bet. Or have an extra dessert, or make a fire outside if there's not 3 feet of snow out there. Toast some marshmallows or make s'mores. I mean, you know, um, we can do some special things, and that's the other thing about being a grandparent is that you can do special things with these kids that oftentimes the parents, if they're working, as most parents are, 2 jobs, they don't have time. And one thing that many grandparents do have is the time to do special things.
And we've talked a lot about the relationship between grandparent and their child. Let's talk a little bit about the relationship of grandparent to grandchild. Talk a little bit about that. What makes that so special?
Um, well, there are a number of things. For one thing, grandparents are the bearers of family history. And, all kids want to know about their families. They want to know narratives. I mean, storytelling is ubiquitous in all societies. Storytelling is, think of the great religious scriptures, whether it's the Bible or the Torah or the Quran or you name it. It's all in narrative and it's all storytelling. And by the same token, kids love stories. They love bedtime stories and they love to know about their families. Grandparents have more knowledge about family history than just about anybody else. So telling them about how their parents grew up, showing them photographs and or videos of their parents growing up, they love that. Showing them, you know, stories of how their great grandparents grew up. I mean, so that they can learn something about their ancestry. I mean, when my mom was alive, for example, and she lived to 102, my kids and then my grandchildren, mostly my kids, would say, "Hey, Grandma, tell us a story about the Great Depression. And then she was a concert pianist, but she, during the 1930s, had to play in department stores to make a little bit of change to help support the family, and couldn't go to college until later. And but stories of adversity, of overcoming adversity, stories of how we fared in various different situations are super important to grandchildren as well as our own kids. And so we are the kind of grandparents, are the family historians.
I had a wonderful relationship with my grandfather, and I'm always grateful for learning about the history of the family and getting able to hear those from someone who was actually there at the time. It's a great gift. Let me ask you this. Talk a little bit about the mentorship role that grandparents can play in their grandchildren's lives.
It's another very important role that we have. I mean, um, they hopefully will see us as, you know, kids don't, as you know, as everybody who's watching this knows, kids will not come to their parents for certain things, especially teenagers. That's okay. I mean, it may be that they need an outside mentor, whether it's the parent of a friend or it could be a grandparent. So, talking with your grandchildren, putting them aside and saying, why do you like to play? Like one of my grandkids plays the drums. Her father's a professional musician and she chose the drums. Uh, can you do a paradiddle for me? And what about a reverse paradiddle? So, asking them about their interests, getting involved with them, having that kind of relationship where they can talk with you about their interests, about asking you questions, having dialogue with them from a very early age builds a sense of mutual understanding and trust. So they may come to us, um, for advice, for a tough situation, like when one of my grandkids, was the one who plays the drums, was over here the other day. She showed me her finger without a Band-Aid on it. She said, "Hey, Kappa," that's what they call me, Kappa. "Kappa, how do you think I got this?" And I went like, did the cat bite you? No. Did you scratch it on your sister's teeth? No. Did you, and I made up all these, and then I said, "Oh, I don't, did you, what?" She's, I don't, she said, "I burned it. I burned it on the stove." I went, "Oh man, that's terrible. Burns are really painful." She goes, "Yeah, you bet." So, even a little conversation like that, which is a little playful and and it can be fun, but it gets to her injury. And hopefully, as she gets older, she'll talk to me about other injuries. Maybe the breakup in a friendship. Maybe, having problems with her parents. Maybe having problems with academics. Who knows? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But having conversations early on, I think is incredibly valuable and builds a sense of trust and confidence between the grandparent and the grandchild.
Oh, it's just a delightful story and wonderful story about building relationships that endure for decades. Let me ask you this final thoughts on this important topic of being a grandparent.
I think learning from your grandchildren is something that's often neglected. I mean, let's face it, we are folks like me are digital immigrants. They're digital natives. So they can teach me a lot about digital media that I mean, they can navigate the phones better than I can. In fact, my daughter, the mother of the daughter her daughter that I was just talking about, got she and her sister a phone. It looks like an old princess phone, like those princess phones that you dial in. It doesn't have Wi-Fi. It doesn't have internet. It has voicemail only. And they can call me up and leave a message, or they can see when they have a message, like from me or somebody else, and they can feel like they're big girls. But they can teach me a lot. So, for example, when I'm trying to navigate those the TV to find, a show that they want to see, for example, they're probably more able to say, wait, Kappa, you got to do it this way. So the fact that they can teach us about things that we don't know already, music. So, for example, they listen to a lot of new music that I don't know, and I listen to a lot of older music that they don't know. So we can teach each other things. So I think learning from each other is something that is a really valuable part of the relationship.
So the information flows in both directions.
Both directions. Yeah.
Gene, a charming and important conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, this has been fabulous.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.